Hi, I'm Rick Fender, Fender Marine Construction, member of the board of directors, and welcome to our episode about how to select a good or great marine contractor. And here with me today again is Tim Abbott of Fender Marine Construction, president. And our vice president, Stephen Whitney, is with us today as well. We can't wait to get into this subject because it's very dear and near to my heart. So the first thing you can do, I'm going to start with the first one. You guys can see what's there. And that is to check a potential marine contractor's website. You can get a lot of information from there. You can look and see if they're good. They'll put their license number on there, which is required by state law, that you have your state certified license there, if you are in fact certified. So the next thing I'd say, well, did you guys have anything to add about that? I mean, by the way, we're getting our website, which we had a beautiful website, but we decided to do a new one. And so it's just about done. It's got some really beautiful photos and a lot of information about projects that we've done. Did you guys have anything to add on that?
On the website?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would just say that, you know, if somebody's website's not up to date, it pretty much shows that they're not paying attention, and that might have some, that might kind of reflect the type of work they do as well.
But
so
I just thought of something. Watch out for a really beautiful website, because many times they are not good. And we've got examples where people bought into, I can think of 3 right off the bat, that were not licensed, did crap jobs, got on the job, got the deposit, maybe even got a draw, and then walked off. Customer called us, and we helped as best we could. So there's double-sided sword there with the website. And then the next thing I recommend is doing a phone interview to save time, and then ask questions like, how long has your business been around? What licenses do you hold? What insurance do you carry? But let me stop on the how long's the business been around. The reason that's important is because the longer they've been around, the longer they'll likely be around. I can say that Fender Marine, we started doing marine construction with the corporation was around 2003. And then in just a couple of years ago, we changed it to a employee shared ownership plan. And at that time, Stephen and Timmy were, before that, they became licensed as state certified building contractors. And so the corporation is a state certified building contractor with 2 licensees, and then my state certified marine contractor's licenses with the company as well, so you got a double whammy. Now, why is that important to check and make sure that the contractor is licensed?
Well, for one, if he's not licensed, he's not legally pulling permits. He might, have someone else pull permits for him, which is kind of shaky ground.
It's aiding and abetting an unlicensed contractor.
Okay.
I love this.
Yeah. Yeah, that too. For one, if a guy doesn't, if they don't have a license, that's pretty, fairly simple. You would, that just kind of, that if they don't have a license, probably, there's a lot of other things they're going to be lacking in too. Like, if you have an issue with something they built, you're probably not going to be able to get them to come back. If they don't have a license, they really don't have any consequence. Whereas, if you have a licensed contractor that does something that's not up to par or that fails or whatever, then, you've got, you could make a complaint to the Department of Professional Regulation that's going to put a mark on his license. Whereas if you don't have a license, who cares? The only thing that you can do is, maybe complain about it, and that's I don't know where that's not going to get you very far. And also, if you do have a license, it does show that you at least have, you have enough experience to qualify for a license, and that's at least better than if somebody that just says yeah, I know how to do it.
Right. Stephen, did you have anything to add on that one?
No.
Okay. Well, we talked briefly about somebody else pulling their permit, and that's happens a lot. Is the unlicensed contractor will come and say, oh, don't worry, my uncle has a license. Well, unless that license is with that company through the state of Florida, it would be considered aiding and abetting an unlicensed contractor, and I think it's like a third-degree misdemeanor, but whoever the licensee is can lose their license as a result of that. The second thing is that if you enter, as a homeowner, you enter into a contract with someone who is not licensed to do that kind of work, whether it's electrical or plumbing or whatever it is, if they're not licensed to do that, your contract with them is unenforceable. So that means you can't, they run off with your money and you say, but I got a contract. Well, no, you don't. You don't have one. So that's really, really important. Another thing is, if they got a license, that means they had to pass a test, not just on the technical aspect of building construction. So you got to study that, but also you got to study business. And many of these unlicensed contractors don't know anything about business. They don't realize that, hey, if they take your money, they still have to finish the job. They don't really know. So that's one thing. And then, Timmy, what kind of insurance does Fender Marine carry now?
We have longshoremen's and harbor workers insurance, which is necessary for any kind of marine construction. And the key to that is, and that's another thing that you need to find out. For one, check their license, get their license number, and then have them send, have their insurance company send you a copy of their insurance binder naming you as additionally insured. And if it doesn't have longshoremen and harbor workers insurance on it, and it just has the workman's comp and general liability, or even worse, just general liability with an exemption to workman's comp, then you're potentially putting yourself at the risk of being sued if someone becomes injured on your property. Because if it's a small injury and it's covered by workman's comp's probably going to cover it. Somebody gets seriously injured, and an attorney gets a hold of that and says, well, you had workman's comp, but you didn't have the longshoremen's and harbor workers insurance, so that doesn't cover this injury. And then guess what? The homeowner is the one that ends up with the bill.
What happens is the homeowner will then go to their homeowner's insurance. Did you already say that, Tim?
I did not.
Okay.
I didn't get that.
They'll usually say, oh, no problem, I got homeowner's insurance. Well, then the homeowner's insurance company is probably going to say, hey, you didn't get a contractor who had the proper insurance for the work they were doing on your project, so therefore your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. And I'm not an attorney, but that's the way that I understand that it works with insurance. But the other thing about the insurance is the Longshore and Harbor Workers Act insurance is required any time you work on or adjacent to any body of water in the state of Florida. So it doesn't necessarily have to be doing seawalls and docks. It could be some of the civil work that we do, like the spillways and some of that kind of pile driving, all that kind of stuff that might be bridges, might not even be docks or whatever. So that is really, really critical, and that, you know, they might have workman's comp and they might have GL, general liability, but it really separates the men from the boys when they got the USL&H. You know that you got somebody real. Another way you can check them is to ask, you know, what professional organizations do they belong to? Well, it just so happens that Fender Marine Construction is member of the Florida Marine Contractors Association. And I mean, we've been very active with them since the start of the company. Just want to throw that. That's not on the list. And so then I wanted to ask, one of the questions you as a homeowner would ask is whether or not the contractor uses subcontractors, or does he build with his own employees? And so if we were to ask Fender that, what would you say?
The bulk of the construction we do with in-house employees. There's portions of some of the stuff such as roofing. We usually have a subcontractor that does our roofing and our electrical. We don't hold an electrical license, and we actually don't hold a roofing license. We could do some of the roofing in-house with the license that we hold. We found that it's, you know, that it just makes more sense to have a licensed roofing contractor that does it every day, instead of our guys that do it, you know, once a month, come in and do that type of work. And other than that, you know, we pretty much self-perform all of the carpentry, structural type work, or anything like that.
The reason I bring that up is that if you look at somebody's certificate of insurance and it says that they're exempt, that means that only they and two other partners in the corporation, two other members of the corporate structure who have at least 10% ownership of the corporation each, are allowed to work on the project. So if you've got a pretty big project and, you know, you're expecting it to be done in any kind of a reasonable time frame, they're probably going to want to put more people on the project. Well, if they've got people working on the project, they're not covered under workman's comp because it's not a part of the certificate of insurance. And the reason, by the way, Tim, that you want to get them to send the certificate of insurance from their agent to you, listing you as the additionally insured, it doesn't cost them any money to do that. The reason you do that is because some of the unscrupulous contractors will white it out, what the coverage is, and fake it, or maybe it's a cert that's out of date and they just change the date. If you, and this is really important, if you actually sign a contract with any of a contractor who's licensed and insured, is that if their insurance runs out, you automatically get a notice from the insurance company to let you know 30 days out, hey, whoever's working on your job, their insurance is going to expire, you better get them to re-up or throw them off the job, or you're not going to be covered. So that's another thing about the insurance. And so the subcontractors, if they're using subs, those subs have to have insurance as well. If they're working off a workman's comp exemption, that's what I was trying to get at. And then one of the other questions you might ask is, what is your backlog? Ask the contractor, how much work do they have? What kind of answers, you get is how you might decide on who to choose. Tim, how would you answer that question if a homeowner was asking you? And by the way, this is a DIY for those DIYs that look at having to jump in the water and jet down the pile and deal with moccasins and alligators and big alligator tooth gar. Let us do it. Timmy, what's your backlog?
Backlog, we're booked through September. We could fit smaller projects in if it's required, but I mean typically we're booked with commercial project through September. We've got a few residentials mixed in there along the way.
But that doesn't mean you can't start on the job. It just means that the actual work can't start, because there's so much engineering and permitting, depending on if, like you said, it's out there in Windermere. I mean, I had 5 permits on one seawall job out there, and it took a long time to get. So what I'm trying to say to those people that are interested in getting work done is start now. Get your permit now. I don't care if you don't want to do it until Christmas. Start now on the permit, and maybe you'll get it by Christmas, depending on the project. It may be a lot sooner. Yeah. But anyway, then I'll go on to another question: is what are your payment terms? And what are your payment terms? Let's say it's on a residential project.
10% deposit, and then depending on the size of the job, if it's a typical residential job that's somewhere between 50 and 120,000, we're gonna ask for 10% up front, 40% mobilization, and then if it's a job that's going to take less than a month, pretty much, and then it's just the 50% final draw. Yeah. If it's something that may take more than a month, we may put a milestone, like a piles and framing or a deck complete or something to that effect, so that that the sheet piles in, and we're gonna have to do the backfill and all this other stuff. We may put a milestone draw in there and break up that last 50%, but typically it's a 10% deposit, 40% mobilization, because once you mobilize, you're generally bringing in all of your material that you have to pay for, and all that material is sitting on the job site, and you've mobilized whatever equipment you need, and you've got guys on the job. So typically that's the breakdown on our.
So that'd be a good question to ask your potential marine contractors, to say, well, we want 50% up front. That means they ain't got no money. Okay, they're getting you to finance them, but 10% isn't nearly the materials and stuff that we're talking about on a project. It's generally somewhere around 40% of a project is material, and that could vary.
And the 10%, the 10% is going to pay for
getting started,
engineering and permitting, pretty much.
Right.
You're going to have to, you have to pay for for these items before you can start the project. So it's not like we're asking, that, and also, if you don't take any money up front and you start working towards that, and then they say, oh well, I don't want to do it, then you're pretty much you put work and time and effort into it and got nothing out of it.
And
at
the
least
stockholders don't like that. This is an employee shared ownership company. Okay, so all the employees will inevitably own the entire company. What warranty? This is another question. Okay, for the customer, any customer. What warranty do you carry on your work?
Commercial warranties are 1 year on work material and workmanship, and then manufacturer's warranty on their materials. And residential is 3 years.
Okay. What about repair projects where you go in and you fix somebody's roof blows off, put a new roof on, or redeck a deck that rotted out?
Typically, we don't do a warranty on repair work because it wasn't something that we built. Now, if it's if we do a repair job and something that we did fails, I mean, we're going to go back and fix it. But a lot of times you can't really, if you're doing a repair job, there's something that caused it to become a repair job because it was damaged, or because it wasn't built right in the first place, or because it's getting near the end of its life. So when you're doing a repair job, I mean, you can, we generally don't offer a warranty. I mean, I can see there's situations where you could possibly offer a warranty, but
I love this. You can tell this is not rehearsed, but this is the company policy, I understand. And so it'd be something good for you guys to ask any marine contractors you're talking to about building a job. So another question you might ask them is, are you being sued by any suppliers? Are they paying their bills? Whether they are having a dispute about a bill or something, are you being sued? You can check that in the court docs. You probably have your attorney check it. But you want to make sure you're working with somebody that isn't getting sued by the suppliers or even by customers. Any lawsuits from customers or suppliers, Tim?
No. No,
Thank
we're good.
goodness.
We're good.
And that was
We're
impromptu.
good.
I was hoping that was the case.
All
right.
Not to my knowledge, I think would be a better answer.
Okay. And so what you want to ask them, and this is a really good one, is have you built any docks or seawalls or boardwalks or bridges, or this doesn't go just for residential. This goes for everybody. Have you done any in my county, in my city, on my lake? So like if you're in Belle Isle, you might say, have you built any docks on my chain, on the Conway chain? And then if they give you the address, you do a GPS, and you can drive by on the lake and check out their quality. What's the latest job y'all built in Belle Isle?
The police dock.
What?
The police dock.
What was that?
The Belle Isle police dock. Well, the Lake Conway chain, I think almost the entire lake, except for I believe portions of Lake Gatlin, is Belle Isle police jurisdiction. And up until now, they've been either launching their boats whenever they had an emergency, and I think they had a relative of one of the city council, or one of the people that worked for the city of Belle Isle, one of the relatives had a place on the lake that they were renting a space there to keep a boat. So now they have their own facility that has 2 boat slips and a jet ski lift for their boat. So now
For the recreational time?
no. But so now whenever they if they get an emergency call or something like that, they don't have to go into somebody's backyard that they're renting something from, or have to launch a boat. They could go to their own facility that's located over off of Wallace, off Orange Avenue, fairly I think the central lake there in Lake Conway, and they can leave from there and get to their
get the drunkards off the sandbar.
Faster to write those tickets.
Everything pretty much be most places in Lake Conway, other than they have to go underneath the Hawker Bridge to get to the farther north lake. That might take a few minutes, but other than that, they can get anywhere in Lake Conway pretty quick from that location.
And so you can also ask for references, and that's a good thing to make sure that whoever you're selecting to build your dock or your seawall or your bridge is the right one. And so that's about all I had for this one. Did you guys have anything to add about what the customers might ask a potential marine contractor?
I don't know about questions they might ask, but I mean, one of the things I would check would be, I would get their license number and check that with the DVPR to make sure that their
Right.
license was in good standing. It didn't have any marks
Right.
against it,
Right.
and just take their business name and see if they're a member of the Better Business Bureau, if they have some type of rating, and if you can find anything else where there's some kind of comments on comments on their business. I mean, a lot of times the only time that you get a comment on your business if it's somebody complaining, but still, we want to kind of look at those and take and then evaluate it yourself. I mean, if you've got 10 comments and they're all complaining about something, and there's not one person in there that said this guy did a good job, and you might want to do a little more research before you actually give them any money or sign a contract. That's the only thing I can say is you definitely want to do your homework, especially in a business like this, because there's a lot of guys out there that some of them may build a good dock, but there's people out there that they're going to take your money and do a crappy job, or take your money and run. So
I
gotta do your
heard the
homework.
Bahamas is really nice this time of year.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was about all we had on this episode, and again, I really appreciate it if y'all send in your questions. This is how we developed a lot of these questions that we're talking about. You could send those to info@fendermarine.com, or you can visit our website at fendermarine.com, or call us at 407-481-8383. And you're welcome to call us if you have any projects and you don't know what to do, or you don't know who to call. Give us a call. We'll help you any way we can. And it's Rick Fender, Tim Abbott, and Steve Whitney signing off.